everyone. My name is Nikki Scott. I'm one of the grief counselors here at Angela. This is my first year doing the holiday workshop, and I'm really excited to kind of share some information with you all. We're going to start off, I'm going to give an overview of grief, some myths about grief, and then kind of how it ties in with the holidays, some self-care during the holidays, and then my colleague Nancy's going to take it from there and talk about aspects of self-care and tips for the holidays. And then Sarah will talk about helping children with grief during the holidays. And then we'll finish with the interactive part. Debbie talked about questions and answers, and then our 2 workshops. So, of course, it's always important to talk about grief, but it's definitely important to talk about it as the holidays kind of roll in here. With the holidays coming up, it is important to talk about how grief impacts our lives. For many, holidays mark the passage of time in our lives. Holidays may magnify our losses. After a loss, it is typical for grieving individuals to feel apathy towards some experiences that used to bring them joy. Try to be gentle with yourself about these experiences because it's not a deliberate choice. You're not purposely doing this. Grief just changes the way life looks and feels, especially during the holiday season. Your needs for support may be the greatest during the holidays, and that's okay, and you're valid. You can and you will get through the holiday season. So what is grief? You all probably know it's a natural response to the loss of someone or something. It's the natural response to loss of any kind. Any type of loss can be a trigger. Mourning is the outward expression of our loss. Whatever your loss is, it's personal to you. So try not to feel ashamed about how you feel because it's all valid. Grief is also an emotional process of you reacting to your loss. Grief means adapting to changes that have occurred in all aspects of your life. Grieving is a highly individual experience. There is no right or wrong way to do grief. There are some different symptoms of grief, which include emotional, physical, social, or spiritual aspects of grief. Some of the physical symptoms in grief include dizziness, shortness of breath, perhaps tightening in your throat or chest, sometimes in a weakened immune system, making illness more likely. It might include sleeping a lot or maybe not getting much sleep at all. It may include extreme restlessness or the opposite, doing nothing for long periods of time, which is all reaction to your grieving process. Some cognitive symptoms might include confusion, irritability, anxiety, and the inability to concentrate. You may feel symptoms of depression or anxiety, some memory issues. You may feel shock, numb, guilty, or even fearful. That's where the anxiety comes in. From a strengths perspective, some other symptoms of grief may include even being thankful, having strength, and gratitude. And all of those are okay, and they can all coexist together. All of those symptoms of grief can coexist together. So we're going to delve into some myths of grief. What grief isn't kind of tells us what grief actually is. So first, one of the myths we have of grief is that we only grieve when someone dies. Of course, there are many losses. We grieve over the course of our lives, and our grief changes as our lives change. All grief, no matter the loss, is valid. The second myth, only family members grieve. No matter who died, please remember anyone who grieves the loss is valid in feeling that way. Everyone is allowed to grieve, no matter who it is. 3, grief is all emotional. Grief is more than just emotional. It manifests holistically, all encompassing. You may feel it somatically, emotionally, or psychologically, but no matter how you feel it, it's all valid. And please try to remember that. Grief. Number 4, grief follows certain rules and patterns. Grief is not linear, even though we think we have to sometimes progress through stages. That's not the case. You will find yourself oscillating over time during your grief journey. You don't have to follow a certain path or do grief a certain way. There is a new way to do grief, and this journey is yours, and you make the rules. 5, it takes 1 year to grieve. There's absolutely no timeline for grief. Again, this is your journey, and you take as long as you need. And for some, it can be lifelong. The 6th myth we have here, the goal is to get over it. The reality of your loss is that you will never get over the loss of someone. With time, you will find that the intensity lessens, But just as your love will last forever, the grief will last forever too. You will carry it forever. You will just find different ways to carry it. 7, grief heals faster if we ignore it. Actually, the opposite is quite true. Instead of avoiding your grief and the feelings that emerge, lean into them. It is not grief you want to avoid, it's the pain. So try to remember that and give yourself the self-compassion and self-kindness to know all of your feelings are valid. The first step is identifying what and how you're avoiding your pain. 8, tears are weakness. Again, the opposite is true. Your tears are healing, and the therapeutic shedding releases oxytocin and endorphins. This helps to ease your physical and emotional pain. 9, we need to be alone to grieve. More than ever, you need a good validating support team when you're grieving. Try to find the people who show you compassion and make you lighter. Hold on to those people and lean into them when you need them. Asking for help is a sign of bravery, not a sign of weakness. Before I go into self-care, I have an excerpt from a poem called Heavy by Mary Oliver. And she wrote, "It's not the weight you carry, but how you carry it. Books, bricks, grief. It's all in the way you embrace it, balance it, carry it when you cannot and would not put it down." So talking a little bit about COVID during the holidays, it's your second COVID holiday with grief. So without question, our first COVID holiday was challenging. You may not have been able to hug family members or even be in the same place. This year, we face our second holiday with COVID, which promises more opportunity to reconnect with loved ones, but we need to stay vigilant. So in order to kind of prepare for the second COVID holiday, we're offering some suggestions from the CDC and encouraging everyone to follow these recommendations. One would be protecting those not eligible for vaccination, such as young children, by getting yourself and other eligible people around them vaccinated. Wearing well-fitted masks over your nose and mouth if you're in a public indoor settings, if you're not fully vaccinated. Avoiding crowded, poorly ventilated spaces. And if you're sick or have symptoms, do not host or attend a gathering. So I'm going to transition here a little bit to a brief overview of self-care during the holidays. So as it's important to understand the grieving process, it's also vital to understand self-care, especially during the holidays. Another little excerpt here. Self-care is not selfish. You must fill your own cup before you can pour into others. Self-care is definitely defined differently for everyone, and it's especially important when grieving to take care of yourself. Self-care is a crucial part of the healing process and can help ease the suffering of mind, body, and spirit. An aspect of grief that is common to all who grieve is definitely the need for self-care. So self-care defined differently by everyone, but what we've come to understand it as a purposeful activity that promotes our physical, emotional, and mental health. There are many, many different forms of self-care that may help you attain an overall sense of well-being. Every individual's grief is unique, and so is their path to healing from a loss. So try to find the self-care tips that work for you. So it's important, but why? Emotionally, self-care has been clinically proven to reduce or eliminate anxiety and depression, reduce stress, improve concentration, minimize frustration and anger, increase happiness, improve energy, and more. If you don't make an effort to work on self-care strategies, you may feel your grief manifest in other ways. Physically, self-care has been clinically proven to reduce heart disease, stroke, and cancer. And spiritually, self-care may help us in tune with our higher power and realize our meaning in life. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nancy Carrera, who will continue now with a deeper look into the aspects of self-care and some tips for the holidays.